Hey, good morning, CSL Palm Desert and beyond.
Good morning. Good morning, Dr. Joe.
Good morning, Reverend Charles. How are you?
I'm well. Good to see you.
You too. You too. So we have another week. Oh my God! It just seems that the weeks keep flying by, doesn't
Yep.
it?
It's pretty wild. Yep. One day right into the next, right into the next, right into the next.
It's been weeks and weeks and weeks. So
We're in the
yeah.
middle of it. It's crazy. It's wild.
Is it? Yeah. Today's my mother's birthday. I gotta remind. I gotta write that down.
Happy birthday, Ma. Is she
Exactly.
watching? Are you watching, Mom? Happy birthday.
No, she doesn't watch me. She says, "I've heard you talk your whole life. I don't need to hear you talk
You
anymore."
don't need any more of this.
I just wrote that down. I'm like, Mom. I just remembered that. I'm like, Friday. Oh my God! It's Friday. It's my mother's birthday. So
On
anyway.
Friday, so it's special. You gonna take a steak over there or anything? How do you guys like to celebrate?
I don't know. I don't know what she's comfortable with yet.
Yeah.
We'll have to figure that out. She doesn't like to go. She doesn't want to go to restaurants, and we'll see. We'll see.
Yep.
And then
Right
she
on.
likes to stay home in case the grandkids call. So we'll see. I think we'll set up a Zoom call or something at some
There you
point.
go.
All right.
Cool.
So what's going on in the world, man? What's going on what's going on in CSLN? Why don't you fill everybody in on what's going on with the groups that you're leading right now, just so that people get an update before we dive into some spiritual stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Well, first and foremost, I want to bring everybody's attention to the survey that's circulating. Hopefully, you all got it. I know there's a couple bugs in the system, but we're working on making sure we circulate it to everybody. So I'm going to be doing a phone call later today in just a couple of hours to make sure that everybody has it. If you don't have it right now, and you're aware that you haven't gotten it, please reach out to the center so that we can make sure and get the survey to you. So either call, or if you're on the email, send an email, go through the website. You can communicate through there as well. But we want to hear back from everybody about the survey, about reopening and our procedures for that, and what as a community we're comfortable with. And we have a task force, a group that's been meeting regularly for the past couple of weeks about best practices, making sure that we're dialed in, that we've got everything, that we're safe. The checklist, as has been our mission from the beginning since the COVID came through the middle of March. We are abundantly cautious. So we are no rush to reopen our center. As Dr. Joe and I have talked about, we want to do it as soon as safe for all of us, and that we feel good about it, and that makes sense from a safety standpoint and all of that. So just know that your center's in good hands with leadership, looking at how we can reopen safely, cautiously, and knowing also that at the heart of the matter, we all want to get back together as soon as possible. So that's going on. We've got we keep scheduling out so many cool activities, meeting. It was Dr. Joe's this week, David Alt, Karen Drucker has already happened. We've got the next 2 weeks basically planned out, almost the next 3 weeks basically planned out, with some really cool characters in our movement, our greater movement, that I hope to introduce you to, that maybe folks haven't heard from yet. My buddy Daryl Jones out in Chicago, my buddy David Alexander down in Atlanta, who actually took over David Alt's center after David retired, which will be a fun conversation. I'm hoping to get Bishop Carlton Pearson, who's also in Chicago. If anybody is familiar with his story, he's been featured on, he had talk about a mega church. He had, I don't know, 10, 15,000 people in his church. And I believe it was in Tulsa. And realized at one point that he's from the Pentecostal movement, and realized at one point that, you know what, this whole hell thing doesn't exist. And his entire congregation fell apart. He's been on CNN. I think he's been on good, it's just a fascinating story. So hopefully he and David and I will have a conversation. It will definitely be David and I, and hopefully Bishop Carlton, and just a lot of other cool things happening. So we're rocking and rolling, Joe. We're doing
We are. Things are, the doors may be closed, but the church is definitely open.
Wide open. Yep.
Telling everybody. So let's just close our eyes for a minute and welcome those who are joining us today to take a deep breath in. And as you exhale into this moment, just let's hit pause on the world and just come into this space and time, and know that something wonderful is about to transpire right here, right now, in this very moment, and in the next hour, with Reverend Charles and myself, sharing whatever gifts we can share, knowing that we are been divinely guided, sustained, maintained by that infinite presence who speaks through us at any given moment. I just know that something inspirational, something awakening, an awakened process is happening in this moment. So very grateful for the time that we get to spend together, and the fact that people are logging in and experiencing that which they need to experience in this moment. knowing that everyone is spiritually fed today. We just know that this perfect hour unfolds, and it does with grace and ease. Into the law it goes, and then out it comes as a demonstration, and so it is.
So it is.
So it is. So yeah, no, and also one big thing, we met with all of our ministerial students this week. Our
That's right.
Graduates. We had a big meeting with all of our ministerial graduates who are putting in their request for ministry. So that's another thing that's happening. We will install them as ministers as soon as they receive a letter of call. So they're putting their programs together as to how they see their ministries unfolding at our center. So we're very grateful for that. So
Dr. Joe, can we tease the Power of 8?
Yeah, talk about it.
Yeah, so Gail Morton, one of our new graduates, is really interested in champion Lynn McTaggart's work called The Power of 8. So this is a new initiative that we're working on behind the scenes right now to bring a greater sense of community. You know, we bring material to you folks, our beloved community. We're interested in having more interaction as well, an opportunity for people to get into. It's an idea of small groups based on intention. And so come the first part of July, we're after we're done, you know, getting the logistics in order, rolling this out so that we have more small group opportunities for our community to engage with each other on behalf of intention, what's important to you, and also just to be seen and heard, so that if you're alone, that's meaningful for you. If you're not, it's still meaningful. You know, it's meaningful for everybody. We're just very excited about this new initiative, and we're working diligently, like I said, behind the scenes to get it rocking and rolling. So stay tuned for information about that as well. I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, I think just to share with people and give a little transparency, in the absence of meeting, we're trying to figure out how small groups, because small groups are allowed to meet, very small groups, and the Zoom call is a way to do that. And also, you know, we may have to get to the place where we're doing like house ministries, where people will invite 2 friends over and watch the Sunday service and maybe have a discussion. So yeah, new and innovative ways to try to create this environment, recreate in this environment a sense of community that's, you know, kind of difficult to do one-on or face-to-face at this point, but doable nonetheless. So
Absolutely.
That's what that charge is happening. Someone wants to know why I have a keyboard in the background. Well,
I have actually had that same question, Joe. Let's hear it. Come on, let's hear it.
Actually, look at it. It's all tilted right now. We had to move it because we had to move some stuff around. But no, both Trey and I play the piano.
I didn't know that. You play?
Yeah, we at our old house, we had a baby grand that he brought from him, that he bought, like his first big purchase in his life. We carted that thing around from Charlotte to Baltimore to 5 moves in LA. And then when we sold the house, it won't fit in this house. So we actually sold it with the house. And so he's like, he has to use a keyboard. He doesn't like it. I don't like it either. But no, we both played. He plays quite a bit. He plays a lot more than I do. I just play around every once in a while. But
have you played at the center in front of the congregation?
Yeah, Trey and I used to do that together as a duet.
Oh, really? So was this a long time ago, or?
Yeah, it's been it's been a long time. It's been a long time. Probably, well, it's when we had a grand piano, so that was a long, long time.
That's fun. I didn't know that. Cool.
Yeah. So there you go. Joe's playing. Joe and Trey played the piano.
All right. Well, I think we should. If we should get to let's get 30 likes and then have Dr. Joe. When we get to 30 likes, we'll have Dr. Joe play something for us.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's see. What do we have? We want a concert with the 2 of us. Oh yeah. Okay. No, we're not doing that. Rob Lamagno said, "I've never felt so connected to a church as I'm feeling and acknowledging now. Thank you for creating such a supportive platform to keep all of us connected and cared for in such challenging times." Thank you, Rob. I appreciate that. Yeah, it does take a lot. It takes a lot of just, you know, you got to think, okay, I got to do one today, you know? All right, so doing one today, you said you picked out a reading in our Science of Mind textbook, which
well, I did, yeah. It's from there's a whole section Ernest Holmes came up with. It's called his interpretation of from the teachings of Jesus, and it's biblical. It takes from biblical quotations and then elaborates on them. And I found one that was, my fan has blown my pages around. There it goes. It's from the book of James, chapter 5, verse 16, and it's called the Confession of Mistakes. And I thought it was particularly important because so let's talk about race just for a second, because it's happening. And how many of us have made a mistake, when it comes to interacting with each other, where it's based on race or it's based on sex, sexual orientation, when I say sex, anything, right?
Everything.
Part of life is making mistakes, or what we call failure, and we sometimes we fail, and it's just the way it is. And I think sometimes as human beings we're ingrained, from whatever culture you're from, with succeed, make the most of it no matter what. And in the walk of that, how many times do we make a mistake? How many times do we fail? And then we feel burdened by it. We carry it around, whether it be through shame, embarrassment, that we start to doubt ourselves, things like that. And I just came across this because I guess what I'm looking for is some relief at this point, just because. So.
Well, wait, before you go there, let me share you something that happened last night.
Okay.
So no, because it's pertinent to what you're just about to go into.
Sure.
So it relates to the conversation that I had with Jafan last week, and I'm going to share it with him on Tuesday, but I thought I'd share it with you today. That Carly was home, and she brought, I think, like 6 of her friends. They all went to dinner and came over afterwards. And they walked in the door, and of course, I was having a spirited debate with some friends over, the issues of the day, the whole, just everything.
Yep.
I stopped them cold when they walked in the door, and I said, okay, you guys are 22 years old, 22, 23. When I say the word white supremacy, what do you think of? And unanimously, they all went, KKK. And I went, no. I said, you're the generation that was supposed to be brought up differently. So I played so it's like, maybe we've made a mistake in what we've defined in books and labels, because people label things and they hold on to the labels. Of course, one guy was really funny. He said, when I think of white supremacy, I said, when do you think of white supremacy, what do you think? And he goes, the Kentucky Fried Chicken guy. I have no idea.
Colonel Sanders.
I'm like, Colonel Sanders, what the hell is that? But you had to laugh. You're like, oh my God. Okay, so in here, that's just a prime example of how we make mistakes. In fact, it rolls right into our talk for Sunday, which is the third agreement, which is don't make assumptions.
Yeah.
We make assumptions based on labels, based on things, and they may have been accurate at some point in time in the history of the world, but they were never updated to reflect what's going on in the world today.
Yeah. So let's be clear too, that the KKK is one of the most overt demonstrations of that.
Yeah.
And they still exist. I mean, there's no shortage of Klansmen out there.
Right.
And it's so much more, lately it's not so subversive, but it's more, where's my vocabulary? It's subtle, but then it turns into overtness, like when there's permission granted for white supremacy,
right,
by whatever, the people that we look to for guidance, then it becomes something that's more transparent rather than kind of behind the scenes showing up. But it's very much still there. But it's interesting, that is the most obvious expression of it. But what we're dealing with now is so much more, not subtle, but it's pervasive, right?
So let's go back to this, Charles. Go back to what you were doing. I'm sorry, I just wanted to add that we've already got a case in point today.
I wanted to speak to that too, though, but because it's interesting. It's not so much the KKK anymore. That's an interest. It's an easy target. It's so many other things. So the confession of mistakes. So here, I'll just read this first paragraph and we can unpack it. James, again from the book of in the Bible, James, the author. James tells us to confess our faults. This thought suggests one of the great psychological truths of the inner nature. Psychoanalysis, which is the analysis of the soul or subjective mind, and please don't get caught up in that, we'll unpack it, is a scientific method for the erasure of false beliefs. It is often forgiveness of sins done in a scientific manner. So just that is a spiritual practice. And what we're dealing with now are subjective ideas that aren't necessarily consciously running us.
Right.
But again, it's like the whole idea of white man walking down the side of the street, black man walking down the side of this, on the same, and what would have somebody go to the other side, whether you're black, whoever you are, what would have you go to the other side, whether you're consciously thinking about it or not. And again, it's not just about race, it's about anything. It's about money, relationships, at home, it's everything. But the whole idea of that, so when Ernest Holmes says psychoanalysis, which is the analysis of the soul or subjective mind, is where a wonderful dance between meditation and prayer, affirmative prayer, come into play. Because when we meditate and we in recovery circles, we call it taking inventory, I would say. You take a conscious inventory of your life, of everything. And so in meditation, we can take we can have it be a reflective experience where we take inventory of where we are, and then see, this is where I'm out of integrity with myself. This is where I'm in integrity. This is where I'm hurting. This is where I'm not, all of these things.
Right.
And bring them into affirmative prayer and actually declare the direction that we want to go. Do you follow me there? It's a dance.
Now for those people that, let me give you how I teach subjective mind.
Yep.
Because it's just a story that I tell people, that what happens on top of picture the ocean, right? We have a picture of the ocean, just water. Yep. A submarine is underneath the surface.
Yep.
So your subconscious mind is underneath the surface of what's happening on top. What's happening on top can be extremely chaotic. It can up and down and toss and turn. And what's interesting is that the subjective mind can remain perfectly calm. Everything's in here. All the information is there, and it just continues to exist no matter what's happening on the top. The thing is, the subjective mind can't reject ideas. It's not like if someone threw a bottle into the ocean, right? The bottle is going to go underwater. It's going to be received. The subjective mind can't go, oh, you know what? I don't like that. Here, let me toss that back in your boat. So one of the ways I talk about the subjective, because people are going, I don't understand what the subjective mind means. It just means that all the beliefs and all the things that have happened to you that are all underneath the surface of your conscious experience, it makes you behave the way you behave because you come from down here up there.
So what do we do? So yeah, absolutely. So what do we do about that? How do we get underneath there to actually create a different experience?
You have to spiritually scuba dive.
That's exactly. You dive in there, right?
Yeah. You have to gear up and go, this is not, and think about it. That's pretty funny. That's a pretty funny analysis. I've never used that before. But it is, because if you snorkel, you can only go down for a little bit. So that's like a spiritual bypass when you go and you take a look and you get back out, right?
Right.
If you really want to make a change, you got to get right in there with the, scuba gear and go into the subconscious and really start looking at some of your belief patterns and things that you've established as a result. And part of making the mistakes is we don't want to talk about our mistakes. We don't want to go to confession for our mistakes, because the ego says, you don't ever want to tell people you're wrong. That's wrong. That you're weak. You'll look weak if you do that. So there's this whole other energy that's always pushing us into being right, even though maybe we feel like we're wrong. We know it, the ego won't let us play there.
Yeah, which actually, and I would say to just keep having some fun with that analogy, is most people, when they go snorkeling, they stay right up on the top of the water and look down. And so you can look at it and observe it, but then you don't go and do anything about it. That takes a lot more work.
Yeah.
To go and change, to actually change. Yeah. And that's part of it. It's one of the things that I've brought forward from my Catholic upbringing. Is the idea of confession. I used to make up sins so that I could get through the exercise when I'd go into but it's now that I've, matured, hopefully, in many ways, see the power of it. Like, I make mistakes. We're all, I think what's happening now too, with COVID and all of it, is that we're realizing the mistakes that we make personally and systemically are being highlighted.
Right.
And so if we could just start telling the truth about, and you're right, the ego doesn't want that, because the ego wants to be right and strong and right. Yep. Mostly. Yeah. So we got to keep talking about it.
Let's keep talking about it.
Yeah.
I want to keep talking on this thing. I'll keep going.
Okay.
Our minds are burdened with many things. Often our religions, which should automatically balance our mentalities, suppress them and create morbidness on the subjective side of thought. This happens when we feel condemned for our mistakes. The Bible tells us that God will blot out all those mistakes, remember them no more against us forever. This is complete removal and erasure of all mistakes. How could it be different? God is a pure eye and perfect mind. He is a perfect spirit. When we enter into the spirit, we bear our souls to its great light. We lose our troubles and are healed. So it's interesting that in the subconscious mind, people have been brought up that, when you sin, when you're wrong, God holds it. God holds it, even though the scripture says differently, that there's all about forgiveness and it's unconditional. There's this idea that God holds on to it, and hangs on to it. And so we do.
Yep.
And that's one thing I always loved about, and I share with this congregation before. That's one thing I've always loved about the Catholic Church. When I went to Catholic high school, there was one really thing that I thought was really cool, that you could go into confession and you could be absolved from your sins. So it's like, hey, a do-over. You got to do over. Now, you're not supposed to go back and redo the ones you just, confessed around. But the reality is it was a big giant do-over.
Yep.
So I do appreciate that in the way that, it appears in like the Catholic religion that you can go through this process if you haven't been taught that you have to hang on to your sins. But what was terrible were that there were the unforgivable sins for so many people. Like I remember the 1960s, early 70s, when my aunts wanted to divorce their husbands and they were in the Catholic Church and they said, you can no longer be part of our church.
Yeah.
That's, it's a sin to divorce your husband. Once you're married for life, and you are not allowed to come back in. So that would be ingrained in her that there was a punishing religion, even though the text says differently. There were people that were passing judgment.
Absolutely.
So it's hard to go to confession for your mistakes when somebody's going to hold it against you for all eternity.
Absolutely. And that's what we want to alleviate, that's not the way that it is.
Yep.
Again, it keeps coming back to I think it's one of the most beautiful statements that someone's ever come up with. God created us in its image and likeness, and we've been trying to return the favor ever since. And that's the whole idea of the parental thing and all of that. I mean, it is so potent and so appropriate that we're charged and called to have an expanded idea of what God is. And in the midst of that, our moral compass ought to come from within. Our moral and ethical compass, not from somebody. Yeah. And I think that's when we realize where we come from and who and what we really are, it's easier to actually kind of decipher what our moral compass is. Don't hurt yourself and don't hurt anybody else. And within the midst of that, there's a massive field to play on.
Right.
Where we can make mistakes, Lord knows it happens. We got to, I guess the reason I wanted to bring it up today, Dr. Joe, is that for anybody listening and all the ways that we are subtly or overtly carrying extra weight in consciousness of, I haven't been a really great white person, in the midst of what's going on, I haven't been an ally. I haven't been very understanding and compassionate while I've been locked in during COVID. I've lashed out more. All of these things is just to find a way to hold ourselves lightly, even if it's like next time you take a shower, let it be that you're washing yourselves away of the mistakes that we make. Because I'm just so interested in all of us holding things more just lighter, right now, because there's a lot of heaviness out there. Yeah. And in one of the dial-in idea calls I did a couple of days ago was, is it possible to see the beauty even in the midst of what looks like the craziness? Can we still see the purpose? Can we have eyes to see beauty everywhere? Right. Which is an internal, it's a movement. It's a thing that we have to discipline ourselves. Can we see the beauty of the chaos that's leading us someplace? It's a challenge, but I think if we can hold things a little bit lighter today, just today, people, if we can hold things a little bit lighter,
just give it a shot.
just give it a shot. Yep, absolutely. Are we getting any comments or questions?
I did have one. If white supremacy brings up the KKK and everyone who hears the term, then why not find another term that will allow an openness and conversation to happen? Well, that's exactly what Jafan and I did
Sure did. You talked about that
Tuesday. So just so you know, we came up with the word race privilege that would help. But anyway, there's a whole, go back last Tuesday, just 3 days ago, go back to our YouTube channel from that and listen to how Jafan and I described, we walked through an exercise about white supremacy and discrimination. So it was a really interesting hour. And it actually, I shared that hour, at least I shared the information that I got in the hour with all those 22-year-olds. You know, they were really receptive to how that looked. You know, I think that generation is more fluid in general. So, but they were able to take those definitions and start really running with those. It was really interesting. All right, so we got to keep going because I do want to talk more about this because it's actually a pretty long part. Here we go.
Yeah, there's good stuff in there. Yep.
The confession of sins or mistakes helps us let go of troubles and to feel that the universe holds nothing against us. Sin means making mistakes, and while we continue to make them, we continue to perpetuate their dire results. We should come daily in the spirit. Excuse me. We should come daily to the spirit of goodness for a complete washing away of all mistakes, fears, and troubles. I like that idea. In fact, I've always threatened for years, and people have always laughed at me at the center. I said, I want to install a confessional at the church. And people are like, no. And I'm like, oh my God, we should convert part of the bookstore into a confessional. And it's all done remotely. So it's like someone walks in and it's like they hit a button and whoop, up I appear on the screen and go, tell me what's going on. And they go, oh my God, you know, forgive me, Father Joe, or, you know, forgive me, Dr. Joe, for I have sinned. And I'm like, okay, yeah, okay. And then when you're done, you go, okay, you're done, good, okay. Well, I've crossed that off your list, and now you can move on. You know, but the act of confessing and then allowing yourself to experience that forgiveness is something we wake up to every day. We have to, do I go to bed with it? Do I wake up with it? Am I like sleeping with that or resting with that or living my day through like that? I think it's important that we recognize that we're given that gift of, and it's not spiritual bypass. I think people make mistakes sometimes, spiritual bypass for forgiveness. And that's not what we're talking about. You don't get a spiritual bypass. I think we have to look at where we've made a mistake and understand the cause of that mistake, because the mistake.
That's it right there. The cause of the mistake.
Yeah, because the cause is the effect is what we're looking at. We have to keep backing it up and going, now what caused me to do this? And then it goes back to the first paragraph. What caused me to do a lot of the things are the things that most of my life is run underneath the surface, is my subjective mind, my subconscious makes decisions on my behalf. So most of those things, it's looking at and saying, okay, I need to review the underside of my belief system and figure out where that came from and dissect it. And that's part of the process. So yeah, I think you have to, you know, acknowledge the mistake, forgive and let go, but don't forget the lesson that's in there. And that is to look at the cause of what created it.
Absolutely, 100%. If we don't, that's where the change happens. Yeah. Because if it's just looking at the effect, then we're probably going to make the same cause. You know, it's like if you don't study history, what is it? You're bound to make the same mistakes over and over again. If we don't study what the cause was, and that's a little bit of, you know, it's history. You know, like what caused me to do that? And that's where it gets uncomfortable. And that's where we need to be willing to be uncomfortable. I've always said that the spiritual path is getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. And because we're constantly challenging ourselves to grow and become a better person, you know, all the things, more loving, more compassionate, all these things. So,
Okay, so someone said, how would the 25-year-old respond to the situation in Seattle being called anarchy? Yeah, because up in Seattle, there's just a lot of stuff going on up there, huh?
Yeah, on Capitol Hill, there's what do they call it? The autonomous zone, where basically, I think the police vacated the East Precinct. It's on 12th and Pine or someplace up on Capitol Hill. You know, Seattle's one of the most socialist, liberal. Nobody in Seattle wants to be told what to do. It's the wildest. It's kind of the new wild wild west. It's very interesting. Um, so what was the question? How would the 25-year-old what?
They're calling it's a situation with anarchy.
Anarchy?
Yeah. But you know what? I also think it's a byproduct. It's an effect of a fire that's burning right now. But eventually that fire will die down enough that cooler heads will prevail. But right now it is on fire. That situation is very hot. It's very tumultuous. Just like any situation that continues to burn and is fueled, it continues to get fueled, but eventually the fuel, when the fuel dies down, calmer heads will prevail, and they'll go back in and go, okay, now how do we do this? It's like people are trying to make a real point, and they're going, to the nth degree to make a point, and rightfully so. This has gone on long enough. So I understand it. I don't like the violence associated with it. I don't like the looting and all the things that are the side arguments that are happening, and the attacking of police precincts and things like that. If this is a battle that requires conscious effort on everyone's part, and a new spiritual code of ethics, so to speak. And I think when that dies down, I think those people who are in that idea, like I'm talking about, are going to find it easier to have more conversations with people, because there's this openness because of that. So I guess what I would say is, how do you respond to a 25-year-old? You say, you know what, just how would I respond to my 20? Well, I have a 22-year-old who lives in Seattle. So what do I say? You know what you need to do. Stay out of that right now, because we're going to approach it from a different place.
Yep.
We're going to educate people in a different way, not that way. And so that's what I advocate. It's like, can we take another approach to educate instead of, the violent part of it?
And also I find it easier to actually learn a lesson when I bring it to the personal level, not the group level. And at the group level, there's rage, there's anger. So what happens to me when I'm enraged or angry, or feel like somehow I don't have sovereignty of my life? Like someone's making decisions for me. I don't have my personal power. I'm not empowered. How do I feel? I feel frustrated, trapped. What do? I get angry. I might act out. And that's what's happening on a community level. But to learn something, I have to bring it back to the personal level. So how would I respond to my daughter when she's, Dr. Joe's daughter's age, is be responsible for your own life. Take responsibility for your experience, for your awareness, for for your emotional body, and don't let what's happening hijack your sovereignty, your capacity to choose and make responsible decisions for your life. And how do you want that to look? Do you want to destroy, or do you want to create? How do we want to be? And it's confusing. It's hard, but to bring it to a personal level is the easiest way for me to learn a lesson.
And to go to that point, it's like, treat people the way you want to be treated.
Yeah.
This is that we haven't been. So it's like, I get it.
Yep. We haven't been.
The cultures have definitely made a mistake. We're working on that. We are so engaged in that process. Keep moving on. Ready?
Yep.
The man who feels that his mistakes can be blotted out is in a better psychological position than the one who thinks God will not forgive. We should learn to let go of our mistakes and remember them no longer against ourselves. Nothing is gained by holding to past errors. The best thing to do is to let go of and forget them altogether. Can you really forgive and forget?
Well, I remember being in the sanctuary. We were having a conversation, and you said something to the effect of, I don't know, something, we were talking about something, and you said, well, their memory isn't very good. And I said, well, that's a blessing.
Yeah.
What a blessing to have a bad memory, because then you just forget. Can we forget? Well, sure we can. But again, it's personal. Like, do
people really forgive and forget? I don't know if they do that. I always say, I've always watched relationships. You bury the hatchet, but you know where it's buried.
Well, right. If you're burying,
you don't forget where you buried it. You're like, I know exactly in the yard where I buried that, and give given the right prompting, I'm going to have an argument and I'm going to be back. I'm going to be with my shovel in the backyard, digging that hatchet back up again and running toward the house.
Darn right. Well, and so that's what I would say is don't bury the hatchet. If you're really doing forgiveness, you dismantle the hatchet. But I agree with that.
You have to throw the hatchet out.
You got to get rid of the hatchet. You don't have it as a weapon anymore.
You know what though? It's so funny because I see people do that. You know, we have the burning bowl that we do like a couple times a year where you write down whatever you want to let go and you put it in the fire. And I always make the joke that once you put it in the fire, please don't try to grab it back. Because there's so many people that they'll go. It's like, wait, let me get the ashes and I'll try to recreate what I just put in the fire. It's like you didn't really let it go if you're feeling like you need to grab the ashes and put the storyline back together. Yeah, that's what it's talking about. It's like move on from the story. I mean, put a period there, turn the page, start another chapter. Not just another paragraph, but you have to go to the next chapter of it.
Well, and do you really want relief? In your experience of life, do you really want relief? I think that's what we're talking about here is do we really want to let go of the things that have, for me, it's my brother. I mean, that is one of the biggest things. If I bring it to a very personal level, he used to kick my butt growing up. I have PTSD. I think I've mentioned this before because of it. If somebody touches me and I don't expect it, I react physically. And there was a lot of rage behind that directed at me, whatever the reason. I could, that's a rabbit hole I don't want to go down, but I was the object, the object of it. That is one of my biggest pieces of work in life is to be able to heal that. And it's something that I keep chipping away at. But the question I have to keep asking myself is, do I want relief? Do I actually want relief? Do I want to bury a hatchet or do I want to dismantle it altogether and actually be free? Which is one of my big words is freedom. Another F word, forgiveness, freedom, for me do I want relief? So to the extent that I continue to hold on to that, even if it gives me fire, even if it lends to the chip on my shoulder, which I take pride in, if it fuels my righteous anger from time to time, do I really want to live like that? Or do I want relief? And I want relief. And it's a journey. It's a walk.
A lot of people don't want relief from it. They say they do, but they really don't. It's because if they didn't have that, who would they be and what would their story be if I wasn't able to come from that place of pain and hurt? Who would I be?
It's part of my identity. There was a movie I think it's called Smoke Signals. I don't know, it's probably 20 years old. Smoke Signals. It's about a father, and it's a story of a father and son and their tumultuous relationship. And the very last line of the movie, after his father dies, is something to the effect of, like once the object of your anger, rage, victimhood, etc., is gone, now what? Now who am I? And it's a powerful. I'm pretty sure it's called Smoke Signals. Powerful movie. But that's the thing is like we get so much of our identity from our story, and our stories are valid and they're real and they're brilliant. But again, it's what now, as I become more conscious, experience of life do I want to have? And it's a hard reestablishing my identity. Well, like you, Dr. Joe, you've even mentioned on the cusp of retirement, whenever you choose to do that, it's like, okay, now what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Now, I think you mentioned that at one point, and not to air your laundry out there. I don't think
I think no, but look, my laundry's been aired around here so much. People have seen my dirty laundry for years and years and years. They've seen me walk through more crap.
Yeah.
And the reason I make a lot of my crap public is because it's like people can identify with it. They're like, oh my God, yeah, I'm feeling that, or I felt that, or I can understand that, or I know someone that's experiencing that. So those experiences are not like, isolated. They're not,
at all.
Yeah, they're more universal than we think. But you know what? It's interesting that you bring that up because another thing too, mistakes in relationships. People make mistakes in relationships, and then they say to themselves, "I'm not supposed to have a relationship. I'm not destined to be in a relationship because I've had so many things fail in these other relationships." And so that becomes part of their belief system, and then they have a longing to be in relationship, but they have a belief that they shouldn't be in a relationship because of their inability to let go of the things that have happened. And then, the universe, because the belief is of that they shouldn't have it. You may have a longing, but if your belief is something different, doesn't matter what your longing and your wish is. If your belief is a certain way,
Yep.
that the belief is what makes that ocean work. That's what makes it do what it needs to do.
Yep.
So yeah, people have to be really careful about what they, just because you wish and you long for something, it may be contrary to the belief that you've made a mistake in that area. And then comes the whole worthiness thing, that you're not worthy of having it because you've already had it and you lost it. I mean, that is just it's avalanche just waiting to happen. Yeah, it
Yep.
just snowballs, and it's a circular. It's a circular conversation. No matter where you go in the conversation, you end up right back where you started from, and that happens every single time. Yeah,
Yep.
every single time.
Yep. Because the thing that you wish for could walk right up to you and slap you upside the head. And if you have that belief that blocks you from it, you won't
Right.
even know what you got slapped by. Yeah. Where'd that come from?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I have dogs in the background. Sorry about that. All right, here we go. All right, keeping on, because we have only like 20 more minutes.
Okay.
It is scientific to consciously let go of all of our troubles. It is the most unwise to hold them. Some will say that it is right that we should suffer from our past errors. It is right that we should suffer. We already have done so, and we will continue to do so until we pay the last farthing. But the last farthing is paid when we let go and trust in the law of good. I love Ernest, though.
I know. Farthing. What is a farthing?
I have no idea.
The price you
coin. It's
until
like
we pay the last farthing.
Yeah, some coin. It's some. You know what? It's referencing some exchange of money in some country.
Something.
Yeah.
Some currency of some sort. Energy.
Yeah. Let's just whatever
Yeah.
it is. It's something
Yeah.
we can use, but just the fact until the last coin is paid. That's what I always refer to. I always refer to the emotional, financial, spiritual, physical, or mental coin that we pay in our lives. And nothing's free. You can't have anything. Nothing is free. We pay for everything in terms of these coins, and we exchange them for experiences. And sometimes we hold on to our emotional baggage because we don't want to eliminate the coin. We want to keep it in our bags. We want to keep it in our pocketbook. So we
Yep.
are. Wow.
Yep.
All right, hold on. We got a really, really long one here.
Okay.
Wow, I can't hardly read that. Last night's news regarding Seattle's Chad event, by the way, CNN, MSNBC, and Fox so illustrated, where we have allowed ourselves to go covering the same event, almost opposite, where one of the above is called anarchy and made fun of it, and the others reflected the peaceful festival style of it, like making a statement that perhaps society can peacefully exist without a militia police as we know it. I am reminded of the 60s DC Resurrection City event, in which my memory says we equally covered by the news media and was peacefully muddy and messy though it was another example of our rampant dividedness or divisiveness in action with our administration and news coverage. No, you know what? Group thought. I'm not going to get the political nature, but I do think that there is this group think thing, and on social media, people are calling themselves out, going, I realize that everyone in my feed believes the way I believe and fuel the way I fuel things, and therefore I am not being balanced at all. So it is interesting that we get into our group think, and we don't challenge the group think. We just sort of hang around people now, and in the world of friend and unfriend on social media, if someone does something that you don't agree with, you don't want to look at or hear it anymore. You just go hit a button and whoop, off they go. And we become quick to dismiss and have other views of things. Absolutely, I get it.
Well,
Now, this is yours, Charles. Can you read it? Can you see it?
Well, I'm on my phone, so I got to
Yeah,
get to
okay.
it.
Well, here, I'll get it then. Thanks for bringing up your childhood trauma, Reverend Charles. I'm Hispanic and grew up in a racially divided neighborhood, black, white, in a house where my police officer stepdad physically abused me. I don't label others for what I experienced, but it is difficult to overcome thoughts of those experiences.
Yeah, it's challenging. And you know what? So what is it within me that if someone, it could be someone I love the most, my daughter. If she comes up and I'm not expecting it and she touches me, I react. You know, so like how do I purge that? That, you know, it continues to be exactly what we're talking about. How do I continue to heal into love, loving touch, you know, that I'm surrounded by safety, you know, and to continue to create that. It's a walk, you know. I've even heard it about alcoholics, you know, that or whatever recovery, that it was a long walk in, it's going to be a long walk out, you know, but we need to be diligent. It doesn't have to be that way, but we need to be diligent about the work of healing. And
Well,
that's what I'm committed to.
I think we have to look at how the brain works with the neural pathways, that you have a stimulus and a response. So you have a pathway that when someone does this, it goes, that electrical current travels in a neural pathway in your head, and you respond a certain way. And it's done it so much. So just think of that neural pathway is no longer a thin wire. It's actually a river of thought. It's huge, right? And it's been flowing back and forth. So it's not just a simple thread of energy going through your head. It's a
Yep.
real rush of energy.
Yep.
So, but it requires us to do, that's where we have to do what I call the neural pathway reroute. I have to start rerouting that. So the next time someone does that, it doesn't, you go, wait, stop, reroute, and then you have to start practicing the reroute, so that you then it's like a train track where you go, okay, instead of going this way, we're going to go this way. So
Yeah.
but it takes a lot of work to block it to go to the new neural pathway. So
Right.
it, you know, and because I was thinking about that yesterday or this morning when I was thinking about those kids answering that question,
Yep.
that, you know, a word generates a response, a label generates a response.
Yeah.
And so we have to make sure that and someone wrote that we have to create new labels. Absolutely. Because now we have to allow ourselves the ability to create that new neural pathway, which says, I'm not going to do the same thing I did before.
Yep.
And that's that if you don't do that, if you don't create the new neural pathway, then you'll keep making the same mistakes, and you'll keep finding yourself back in situations that you've always been in. And you ask myself, oh my God, here I am again. And you're like, you know what? You then look at your neural pathway, look at your belief system, because those two things they're constant and they're consistent, and they will bring you always back to where you are and have been, based on your book of belief, actually, based on we've already established is going to be your truth.
Yep.
You have to have the reroute.
And it's a discipline.
Yeah.
It's not easy work. Go ahead, Joe.
No, go.
Well, no, it's not easy work, but it's worthy work, because again, it's about relief and freedom, and that's what I'm interested in. I love this next little paragraph.
Yeah, go for it.
It is impossible for a sane person to believe that God delights in condemning or damning anyone. God is natural goodness and eternal loving kindness, and holds nothing against anyone. I mean, if we can embody that, you know, it's interesting too. Who's our first God? Our parents. That's God. Our parents are our first God. And that's where we learn sanity and insanity. I mean, if we take it out of, you know,
right,
a religious context, that's where we learn, you know, right, wrong, et cetera, you know, our ethical compass, that type of thing. But again, we can rewire that as well. But if we consider this, it is impossible for a sane person to believe that God delights in condemning or damning anyone. I mean, even with my mom, who I love, she's my mom, you know, we've done a lot of forgiveness work and stuff over time. And she had 3 of us and was doing it on our own, and it was crazy and that kind of stuff. But there were moments of absolute insanity when we were growing up, you know, that she was just like, well, I'd have to get her permission to tell a few of the stories first, but it was insanity, you know, when we learn those types of things. And so it's how do we get back to sanity, is to realize that my mom wasn't really insane. She was just, in that moment, overwhelmed with 3 kids coming home, and we just started a fire in the kitchen. You know? So, you know, it's
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, Charles, if I reflect back just a couple weeks and I saw you on day, oh, I don't know, 175, when you had Mila at home all by yourself, locked
yeah,
in, sheltered in, and you were like, ugh. Yeah, and that's just a taste. That's barely a teaspoon of the gallon of stress that was consumed by your mother in that moment.
exactly.
You'd have a real appreciation for all of that.
Real appreciate. I don't know if I can do it. I'm seriously. I don't- Is the gas tank full? I'm out of here.
Yeah,
No, but that's it though. Is like God, the thing, the very place that we come from, the thing that we are, holds nothing against any one of us. So the shame that we hold and you know the fear and all of that is we picked it up someplace,
yep.
and we can let it go too. You know, Gail Morton, one of our graduates, did a beautiful talk in her final work last week about about letting go and
Yeah.
how easy is it. And from a physical standpoint, it's as easy as this. From a metaphysical standpoint, it's the same principle and it's as easy, but it's more challenging because of our belief system and our identity and what we choose to hold on to. But I love Ernest Holmes. You know, if you're sane, you know that God isn't condemning you right now. And I think I love that line drawn in the sand. Do you want to be insane or sane? And I think sanity says that there is no God that's holding anything against you. You're not bad and you're not wrong. You know, what was it? How much shame, Dr. Joe, was there back in the 70s and 80s about being a gay man and the whole HIV thing and all that? You know, it was running rampant, right? I mean, I think I even told you that when I was a dumb little kid, it was "you have AIDS" was a joke we'd say to each other to cap on them. Ignorance and stupidity. I mean, I can't even imagine how much shame that we added to the entire thing just out of
Yeah.
being insane. When I was in 4th and 5th grade.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
Yeah.
don't I don't I don't know where I'm going with that, except
Well, with that, we've all made mistakes and that you have to forgive yourself for them and go, okay, now I need to move on from this.
yeah,
So when you were saying that just now, I was thinking about that scuba diver analysis that I have. So I always use the fact that the wind is always right at the right angle, and that our sailboats are meant to just sail across, our lives are meant to sail across, even in the most stormy conditions, with the right sails at the right position, right? And what happens is life experiences, they're like anchors. When I was a kid, we used to go fishing. We used to have those tin can anchors where you just put the coffee cup, put a bunch of cement and a rope in it.
yep,
Well, they were never really good anchors because they were never heavy enough. But if you put several together, you could get one that would actually hold your boat in. But
yep,
in life, the mistakes that we made, we put them overboard, and we put them onto the rivets all over the top of the boat, and it just slows the boat down no matter how fast we're going. And then I brought up one more analogy when I was thinking about it today with the scuba diver. And every once in a while, one of those anchors will get lodged in coral, and you can't pull it up. And it requires a scuba diver to go down and actually dismantle that and free it from the coral, or from
totally.
rocks or something. And
Great illustration.
yeah,
Yep,
so that the scuba diver is actually going down, taking time to look at, okay, and then allowing it to be released.
yep,
Then
yep,
allowing it to be brought up.
yep.
Well, Charles, we managed to do it all in an hour.
Yeah, we're rocking and rolling. Sometimes I come onto these things, I'm like, how are we going to fill an hour? And then it's just, what? The hour's up?
Yeah, happens with me all the time, all the time.
Love it.
So
Love
let's
it.
see. I'm going to be here on. Let's see. Next week is David Alt, my friend David Alt. He and I will be on Monday. We're going to have another one of our wonderful discussions. We get a pretty good response on that one. David Alt is going to be here, and then Jafan is on Tuesday,
Yep.
and then I'm going on a vacation for a couple of weeks. So I'm going to be out of town, but Reverend Charles is going to be taking over the programming, and he'll be announcing his guests. So I think the first one is Sensational Six will always be on Wednesdays, and then
Yep.
then you have Jeff Harrison.
Jeff Harris coming out from behind the booth.
Yeah, the guy Spring Point Media, Jeff Harrison, he has a lot of insight on a lot of different things. So
He sure does.
I can't wait to. I'm trying not to pay attention. I'm gonna have to just watch it when I get back. And now, who
What?
was Daryl Jones? One more time. Who is Daryl Jones on Friday?
Daryl Jones is my friend, Chicago. I met him when I was at the Bodie Center, actually, with Mark Anthony Lord, and we just had an instant love affair. And his father was a minister. He just actually passed away a few months ago. His father was a minister in Ohio, and so it's in the family lineage. And he just has a unique perspective on things that is wonderful. He's just a rich, deep man. We're going to talk about his family history. We're going to talk about the state of things. And it's just he's a beautiful human being. We'll get information out. You can see what he looks like. He's compassionate. He's a musician. He and I used to get together and I used to go over to his apartment, and he plays the keyboard and sings, and we would just cuz on a Tuesday night, I'd go over there and I'd pray and he'd sing, and we'd just do it for like an hour and a half, praying and singing together. It was just a little church, 2-person church. So it's going to be a great conversation. Yeah.
Good. So it's going to be a good week. All right. So everybody, tomorrow is Saturday. So we have meditation. And then, of course, our services on Sunday. We'll cover the third agreement about assumptions. It's going to be Steve Rogers is our guest artist this week. So his name is Steve
Rogers. That's going to be great.
Let's see what else. Donations. Yeah, if we'd love to continue donating.
Please
continue to support your center. When we do finally open up, we definitely want to be able to open up the way we opened up in the past and the way we were, or at least as much as we can be that way. So, but it's going to require everyone to keep stepping up and supporting our center. So thank you.
Big, bold, and brilliant. Big, bold, and brilliant. Yep.
I like that. Big, bold, and brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. We would definitely appreciate those big, bold, and brilliant contributions at this point.
Absolutely.
All right. I think that's it, Charles, man. Are we good?
We're good. Have an awesome Friday.
All right. Have a great Friday, everybody. Tune in next week or tune in tomorrow. Meditation and church services on Sunday. Yep. Bye, everybody. Have a great time.
Love.